Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, it's Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. So this is going to be the start of a brand new series where I talk about who I personally think is the best version of and then a particular character that we have had multiple versions of. I mean, this was kind of influenced by my ranking series of Doctor Who when I did the Doctors episode, and I just thought, well, there's multiple characters out there that have been played by multiple people. Obviously, it's not the same as, you know, regenerating, and it's literally the same character, even though they've got a different face. But especially with stuff like superhero movies, you know, there's reboots all the time, and there's different universes and whatnot, so I just kind of want to talk about who I think is the best version of a particular character. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Spider-Man is one of my most favourite characters ever. He's my favourite Marvel superhero. I've grown up with him. Like, I cannot remember a time where Spider-Man was not in my life in some way, shape or form. Whether it's comics, whether it's video games, whether it's cartoons, whether it's movies, Spider-Man has had such a huge presence for me, and I imagine for a lot of people watching this as well. However, on the big screen, we have had a grand total thus far of 3 versions of Spider-Man played by Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about each one of them and then tell you guys which one I think is the best. So we'll start off with the original then, Tobey Maguire, and I mean, I've done a video about this before, like a year ago, something like that, where I talk about the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And what I will say is, when I was a kid, I loved these. I cannot deny that I did. I genuinely thought they were some of the best movies ever. However, with hindsight, I really fucking don't like these movies, and I really don't like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. Now, because a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this, and you know, nostalgia does play into it. Like, I understand that with some things you do look back on them with rose-tinted glasses, and you can kind of let things slide because you have such fond memories from being a kid watching a certain thing or reading a certain thing or listening to a certain thing, whatever it might be. But yeah, the nostalgia for these movies really isn't there for me, and I think Tobey Maguire is a big factor. I just find him boring now. I just don't find him interesting or compelling as a character, and I don't think that is something that is specific to Peter Parker / Spider-Man in these movies. I think it's a common thread for a lot of the characters in these. A lot of the characters in this trilogy genuinely do feel like watered down versions of themselves. Now, whether that's because of the writing or the direction, I don't know. I mean, there's a few exceptions to this. I mean, Norman Osborn and J. Jonah Jameson really stand out as amazing portrayals of their respective characters. I also really enjoy Sandman in Spider-Man 3, and Harry Osborn has his moments as well. But I mean, Mary Jane, she's an absolute fucking wet lettuce, and Spider-Man in these movies, he ain't much better. I think Tobey Maguire really lacks the sort of charisma and charm that you would need for Spider-Man. Like, the problem is, the way that I interpret Spider-Man is a character who, yes, is bullied, yes, is quite sort of shy and really within his shell, but he is, on the inside, this really cocky, super confident guy with also incredible intelligence as well. Not like Reed Richards, Tony Stark level, but he is a fairly intelligent guy, really above average. But in these movies, he's just a dull, boring idiot, and he's kind of the same person without the mask than he is with the mask. And I think that's the problem, because Spider-Man is where Peter Parker really can be the sort of cocky, confident prick that he is on the inside, you know, cracking jokes as he's webbing up villains and stuff like that. But Tobey doesn't really do that. The way he plays Peter Parker is the same way that he plays Spider-Man, and I don't like that. I do prefer Spider-Man to have that sort of dual personality thing going on, I guess. I mean, over time, Spider-Man does sort of blend together, you know, the Peter Parker aspects and the Spider-Man aspects, but throughout these entire movies, he's just that all the time. He's just boring Peter Parker and boring Spider-Man, and I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for this. I know people aren't going to agree with me, and that's totally fine. Look, if you love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and you love these Sam Raimi movies, great. I just don't. So I guess we can already tell who's not the best then. But moving on to somebody who could be, and that's Andrew Garfield. Now, obviously, Andrew Garfield has only appeared in 2 movies at this point. Well, I say at this point, he ain't appearing in any more. But yeah, so Andrew Garfield appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, regardless of what you think of these movies, I genuinely think that Andrew Garfield is a pretty decent Peter Parker and Spider-Man. More so Spider-Man than Peter Parker, though. Like I said before, I do think that Spider-Man does have this dual personality personality thing going on. I'm saying it like that, but it's not like a Batman. Well, no, it is like Batman in the sense that Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is who he really is. I do think that Spider-Man, there is an element of that, but I also think that, you know, being in the mask, that's who he wants to be, so he lets that out, because as Peter Parker, he can't, and I think that's kind of the difference. That's kind of what I'm getting at here when I say dual personalities. Again, just my own interpretation. And whilst I think Andrew Garfield is really good with the kind of cocky prick side of Spider-Man, and he is quite humorous at times, and he is very sort of self-assured and very confident and outspoken, I honestly think some of the best ever Spider-Man scenes on film have been in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Like, there's the scene in Times Square in the second one. I like the small knife scene in the first one. I love the fight in the school against the lizard. That was a really great Spider-Man moment. But I just think it's the Peter Parker side of Andrew Garfield that kind of really lets him down. Again, this could be script issues, this could be the director, I have no idea what it could be. Maybe it is Andrew himself. But what I will say is that this Peter Parker, I mean, some people will say that, oh, he's too cool. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't necessarily say that his version of Peter Parker is cool. I mean, just because you have spiky hair and a skateboard, that doesn't make you cool. Like, you can be the biggest fucking dork on the planet, but you can ride a skateboard. Like, it's not like a written rule. Well, yesterday he was like really enjoying his science and proper geeking out about this sci-fi show, but today he's riding a skateboard, so now all the women want to fuck him. It's not exactly how it works. I don't know, he's not really bullied. Like, one of the major aspects of Spider-Man to me that is the most relatable is the fact that he's bullied. Now, it's not a great thing, I'm not condoning bullying, but that is one thing I do want to see happen to Peter Parker, because it really shapes him as a human being, particularly when it comes to Flash Thompson. Now, I don't think that the Sam Raimi movies handled it perfectly, but I do think that they handled it a lot better than the Amazing Spider-Man films. I think Andrew Garfield's version of Peter Parker comes across as somebody who is more just in the background, blending in, and not really a standout person to be like a target for the bully. I mean, there's that scene where that kid is actually getting bullied and you see Peter just stood at the side and you think, realistically, that should be Peter that is getting kicked the shit out of. I know that sounds pretty harsh and morbid, but it's kind of true. That's what you want to see, because things like that, as I say, they do shape who Peter Parker is and will become a Spider-Man. And then obviously in the second one we do get mopey and angsty Peter, and I mean, there's this shit with his parents as well, but that's more of the movie's fault than it is, you know, Andrew Garfield's. But yeah, I think this Spider-Man really had the most potential, but they just didn't really fulfill it. Either way, I still think Andrew Garfield is good enough, and I honestly wouldn't have minded seeing a third Amazing Spider-Man movie. I know a lot of people really didn't like them, but I do quite like the first one, and I like a fair chunk of the second one. Not all of it, there's a decent amount there that I like. I think there's a good movie in there, but it's just held back by a load of shite. And then we come to the latest Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Now, I mean, yeah, it's Tom Holland. To me, he is the best Spider-Man that we've had thus far. I don't know what it is, because there are certain things with this Spider-Man that I fucking loathe. And I'm not talking necessarily about how Tom Holland plays the role, but sort of character choices that Marvel have gone with and certain decisions that they make in the movies that I don't agree with at all. Having Tony Stark give him the suit and making it into a little Iron Man suit, and also in Spider-Man Homecoming having Iron Man pretty much save Peter Parker 3 or 4 times throughout that film, I hate that. I really, really hate that, because like I said earlier in the video, Peter Parker does have above average intelligence. He is a really, really smart guy. Now, is he more intelligent than Tony Stark? No. However, what you want to see from their relationship is them working together, not just Tony handing him freebies because he likes him. When I see Spider-Man in his costume, I don't want to see all this tech. Now, obviously, the recent PS4 game, there is a lot of tech there and it is involved with the suit, but it wasn't given to him by Tony Stark. It was made by Peter himself, and if we saw it like that, if we had a Spider-Man that, yeah, did have the technological suit as opposed to just, you know, pajamas, but it was him that made that suit and it wasn't Tony Stark or Stark Industries giving him all this tech for free, then I think it would work a hell of a lot better, because then you would get a proper sense of Peter's intelligence. I mean, there are hints at it because of his web shooters and whatnot, but I think this is the main thing that really holds back Tom Holland's Spider-Man, even though I will say he is the best. I do think he handles the sort of really awkward, geeky side of Peter really, really well. I mean, there's that scene in Infinity War where he's just like, Doctor Strange, oh, we're using our made-up names, I'm Spider-Man then. He is a teenager, and I think that is the main thing about Tom Holland that I can't say about Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire. Now, I'm not talking about their literal ages, I'm talking about the way that you would perceive them. Like, you watch the original Tobey Maguire movie and you see all these kids in high school, and you just think, why the fuck is there so many 30-year-olds in a high school? That doesn't make sense. Andrew Garfield, whilst looking younger, still not a teenager, whereas Tom Holland, he isn't a teenager, literally, but he is young enough to pass for a teenager, and I think that really benefits, and it helps his performance as well. I just love how witty this version of Spider-Man is as well, and I love how he kind of freaks out when he's in the middle of things. Like, there's that scene where Mantis is crawling towards him, and he's just like, oh my god, don't lay your eggs in me. Like, this is the exact type of Spider-Man that I want. Somebody who is really smart, like I say, but is also socially awkward, a goofball, and can crack jokes at the most awkward of times. That to me is Spider-Man, because that's what I related to as a kid. That was me, pretty much. Not everything. I'm not saying that I'm above average intelligence or anything like that, but like, this kid acts exactly like I do, except I can't put on a costume and then go and kick the shit out of people. I mean, I could, but it wouldn't be me who was beating people up. I would be getting beaten up. I think the genius thing as well with the casting of Tom Holland is the fact that he can last for how many years now? Because he's like, what, 21, 22, something like that? You can see this Spider-Man mature and grow, and I am really excited to see where this version of Spider-Man does end up. I mean, by the time it's coming closer to the end for Tom Holland, then maybe we could see him mentor somebody like a Miles Morales, and I think that would be absolutely awesome. I think he really does just capture everything I wanted from Spider-Man. But let me know in the comments, guys, who is your favourite version of Spider-Man? Is it Tobey Maguire? Is it Andrew Garfield? Or is it Tom Holland? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. And like I say, I imagine a lot of people are going to criticise me for not liking Tobey Maguire and saying that I'm a fucking prick, but it is what it is. Opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon are in the description below, so if you would follow me on them, then I would absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye.